there's seemingly an intractable situation in terms of what the two sides want, because they want things that I think are incompatible and they can't both be true. I think Netanyahu wants Trump to say, yes, we're going to get rid of all the Palestinian people. We're going to clear out the Gaza Strip, etc. And also want a deal with the Abraham Accords, and I want normalized relationships with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has said unequivocally, yeah, we ain't doing that. We're not going to have any kind of relations with Israel until the Palestinian thing is solved first. And by getting the people out of there, that's not solving it. So how is Trump going to come out of this with the win? And how do you see, what do you see coming out of this with Netanyahu?
We remember several of us commented that Trump's remarks, public remarks about moving the Palestinians to Jordan and to Saudi Arabia and other places, how that was not smart. I've now revised my position on that. I think what he was doing, that he was saying that in public, so that now in negotiations with Netanyahu, he would say, hey, I tried. I've made a public request, and Jordan and Egypt and all of the Gulf states, including the Saudis, have come back and said, not just no, but hell no. So I've tried. I tried to do what you want. There's no way I can do that, and I'm not going to go to war with those countries over it. So that's a non-starter. And I'm thinking, okay, because he now no longer has to argue that point with Netanyahu. He says, here it is in black and white. I made the request. I tried to do it. It got rebuffed. Maybe Trump knew it was going to get rebuffed, and that's why he did it. That's number one. And number two, Netanyahu's going to press him to attack Iran, or at least back an Israeli attack on Iran. And Trump's going to say, hell no. No, it's not. We're not going to war. Because Trump, I believe, has open action negotiations with the Iranians. And that may be one of the jobs that Witkoff has, in addition to, having already brokered the ceasefire. Trump, I think, is genuinely interested in establishing a legacy as a president of peace and not of war. To that extent, he will see, he'll tell Netanyahu, look, if I can get the Iranians to agree in hard terms that they're not going to build a nuclear weapon, then you don't need to worry anymore. But at the same time, he's going to be under pressure. He said, the Saudis aren't going to make any agreement for recognizing you unless the Palestinians have a secure state. So we need to work on that. Now, I think he's not going to be insulting, but he's not the organ grinder monkey at the end of Netanyahu's string. I think Trump's got his own plan.
He's no Joe Biden, what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah, because he never used any of the leverage that he had at any point. It didn't appear, and that was played to success for the Netanyahu side. I won't say the Israeli side, because I think that a lot of what Netanyahu's been doing is going to be counterproductive for Israel, and they'll be paying for this for a long time after he's long gone from office. But the last thing I would like you to comment on related to that, though, is kind of the more narrow, thorniest issue. Netanyahu has set an objective that Hamas cannot rule anything in Gaza after it's over, right? So this is necessary for phase 3 to be resolved. But Hamas has survived 15 or almost 16 months of war against Israel, and they're still quite viable and valid. And I see no evidence of any sort that they have any intention to just lay down and say, okay, we'll do whatever you say there. So if both of those sides stay intransigent, and Israel, I don't know that they can do another 14, 15 months of war and probably still have the same outcome. I just don't think they can do it on a number of fronts. How do you see the Hamas situation being resolved?
Well, the only way it's going to get settled without a continuance of the violence is if Hamas will take control of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian movement. The Palestinian Authority, led by Mahmoud Abbas, has been completely discredited as simply a tool of Israel. Yeah. And the support, even though the Palestinian people in Gaza, and this includes Christians, because not everybody there is Muslim. There are Christians as well. their respect and support for Hamas has grown, not shrunk.
Right.
And
it did dip for a while, but because of what Israel did, it actually started rebounding and now has, I think, risen even above the pre-war levels.
yeah, exactly right. So, they're a factor. And up to this point, you've had not just Iran, but with the Saudis and others insisting, and including Turkey. We'll see how, much, there's a lot of hot air out of Erdogan. We'll see how much actual action gets put into his words. But Hamas is going to insist upon the rights of the Palestinian people being protected. And now it creates a real problem within Israel. That's not easily solved.
Look specifically at Netanyahu. How could he even navigate something like that when he absolutely put his whole stamp of approval and his credibility on the line to destroy Hamas? Now, how is he going to go back to actually negotiating with Hamas?
Yeah. He's gonna have to do that or leave office, because Israel, despite the constant self-congratulatory tone out of Israel about how great their defense forces are, the last 15 months really showed the limits of the Israeli Defense Force. From air operations, they could bomb the hell out of unarmed civilians with no air defense. Yeah. Well, hey, I can go outside and stomp on an anthill. That doesn't get rid of the ants in my backyard. It just destroys that one anthill. So Israel cannot kill its way out of this. It cannot, through just violence alone, find a solution. And the Palestinians still, the scene the other day when you had almost 1 million Palestinians marching north from southern Gaza back into northern Gaza to their homes that are just shattered. And they were going to dig through the rubble to see if they could find the bodies of fathers, mothers, children, aunts, uncles, grandparents, so that they could bury them. There's a quality to this people in terms of their ability to endure incredible suffering and loss and still maintain some degree of humanity. It's, we really have very rarely seen anything like this in history. And, the Israeli population suffered a bit of a punch in the nose with the last releases of these hostages, because particularly the female soldiers, the first 3 and then 4 that were released, they weren't crying, they weren't disheveled, they weren't showing outward signs of trauma. They were smiling. They were saying shukran, Arabic for thank you. So they were expressing gratitude to the people that had held them hostage, not for taking them hostage, but for at least while they had him hostage, they weren't being subjected to rape and torture. Unlike what the Israelis have actually been doing to many Palestinians. And there's video evidence of rape and torture. So that's really forced the thinking Israelis anyway to say, wait a second, the story we've been told doesn't match up with what we're seeing with our own eyes. And then on top of it, the reservists who are going home after having been involved with committing war crimes, there's a mental health crisis within Israel. And they're also talking to family and friends about it. So it's not a good moment for Israel. Israel cannot step up and say, you know what? At the end of the 16 months, we are so much better off than we were 16 months ago. No, they're actually worse off.
And maybe it's beyond the scope of what we can talk about in the last few minutes we have here. But just like in the United States, there are what I had an author of a book on last week talk about how there are basically 2 Americas. That was one of the things that stood out to me. Yeah, it was fascinating and terrifying episode. But there's also a similar dynamic in Israel where there's the one Israel where they want the war to be over. They want to have some kind of a deal with the Palestinians to coexist so that everybody gets to live in peace. They don't have to worry about war. And then there's another Israel that all they want to do is kill all the Palestinians and all the Arabs and drive them all the way out. How does Israeli society cope with those 2 different versions of itself?
Well, one side is ultimately going to have to prevail. That's where I would have loved to have had a discussion with that author, because I disagreed with him on some of the key points. You know what? We're not fighting over whether you prefer your vanilla ice cream with vanilla bean specks or not. You know, some of the battles are actually over consequential things, and you have to stand up and make a choice. Now, that's what we've seen Donald Trump do in the first 2 weeks of his administration. Hey, enough with this transgender nonsense, he said. There's male and female. That's it. And if you're in the U.S. military, you're male or female. If you can't abide by that, get out. But we're not going to indulge this particular point of view anymore. He took a clear stand. Are there people in the country that oppose that? Sure. But the reality is they're a minority. They're not a majority. But the media was set up in such a way to present that as if it was normal, as if it was commonplace, and if it was basically a majority view, which it was not. And so that was all, sort of part of a propaganda effort. In Israel, they're going to see the same thing that they were told that Hamas is this nasty terrorist organization that's just wantonly killing Israelis. But the actual number of Israelis killed by Hamas military and terrorist attacks compared to the number of Palestinians killed by Israeli military and terrorist attacks they're not even in the same ballpark. You're talking fewer than 2,000 Israelis total from terrorism over a 20-year period. And yet
20-year period.
And yet on the Palestinian side, when you count in October 7th, what's happened since October 7th, the numbers are up around 60,000, if not more. So there's no comparison, and those numbers at some point come to resonate, because there are many people in Israel who are true to their Jewish faith and see the horror and the evilness in this. That's what. Let's not forget. I'm always keen that people don't present this as an anti-Jewish thing, because some of the most prominent people speaking out about these horrors are Jews. Yeah. Whether we're talking Max Blumenthal, Jeffrey Sachs, Aaron Mate, Norm Finkelstein, just to mention a few. So it's not isolated. This is not Jew versus Muslim or Jew versus Christian. This is a fairly narrow band of these radical Zionists who, you find them within Christians, you find them within Jews, that are trying to justify a particular belief that they claim is divine in order to carry out horrific murder and theft. So, I think as ultimately the reality starts to intrude. There's a video out today from New York City showing a guy walking along the streets expressing amazement, because the streets that he's walking, he says just before Donald Trump was inaugurated, these streets were filled with all these illegal migrants selling counterfeit merchandise, and that means they were working for somebody. And he goes, you could hardly walk down the sidewalk. He goes, now it's clean. It's completely clean. He says, I feel safe. So it's just that sort of simple actions that are taken can end up actually having some profound effects. And it may just be that Trump, by virtue of trying to negotiate a peace with Iran, at the same time putting limits on what Israel can do to the Palestinians, may provide a way that there can actually be a peaceful resolution here. I hope so.
At least you can have a period of stability, because it's going to be a generation before you can get, I think, a genuine peace. But you can definitely get a viable, sustainable stability so that peace can have a chance to be over a long time. But last question, is that even possible with Benjamin Netanyahu in office?
not likely. It's possible, but not likely. But, again, Netanyahu right now is battling. He's got some heart issues, and he reportedly has prostate cancer as well. So he's actually, you know what? He started to come to grips with his own mortality to recognize that he may not be long for this world.
Well, that, and also he may also, unlike Trump, he may end up in jail because he has got some legal issues that he postponed just to come to this trip here in Washington, and so he's not out of the woods on that yet either. And so we'll have to.
There's always the possibility that he could come to his senses, but up to this point, he's shown that the only one he cares about is him. It's not the people of Israel, certainly not the people of Gaza. The most important interest to serve is what's best for Bibi.
Yeah. Well, for the sake of the people of Israel, for the sake of the people who live in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank and in southern Lebanon and all the other places in the region, I certainly hope he does come to his senses so that everybody has a chance to live in some kind of stability, if not outright peace. We'll have to see how that turns out. But thank you very much for coming on today, Larry, and all these very thorny issues and bringing some clarity that we don't get when we go to the mainstream media. So we're always thankful when you come on.
We live in the briar patch, brother.
And just to remind everybody, if you don't get enough of Larry, we only get him about once a week. Go to sonar21.com. You can always find out what Larry's up to. And you see, we cited on some of our shows as well. So it's good stuff to go to. So be sure and like and subscribe if you haven't done that on your way out. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive.